Okay, my name's Jim Rapetti. I'm the town moderator. I'd like to welcome you to the moderator's meeting. Before I start with some introductory remarks and then we start to go through the town meeting procedure, we're distributing a copy of some of the basic rules that deal with motions at town meeting. I know a lot of people think it's a little bit of a mystery. We follow a set of rules that's based on town meeting time. It's a treatise that was prepared by the Massachusetts Moderators Association, and there are copies in the library. The handout outlines some of the basic motions that you'll hear during most of our town meetings and the process that we have to follow so that people won't have any surprises as the meeting progresses. The most important thing that I can stress is that a motion for reconsideration can be made at any time until the meeting is dissolved. I've had a lot of people call me asking me if I could move Article 18 to earlier in the meeting, and I have told them no for two reasons. One, if I felt that if I changed the order, people might feel that there were winners or losers, and I didn't want people to feel that we were tilting the playing field one way or the other towards one group or the other, so I decided we would keep it where it is. And the second and most important reason for keeping it where it is that it really doesn't matter, because the motion can be voted for reconsideration at any time until the meeting dissolves. That means that if we go until 11:30 on Monday night, it can be brought up for reconsideration at 11:29. If we go a second night on Tuesday, and I'm really hoping that we will not, you'll see that I'm going to be leaning on people to be short in their comments, that can come up for reconsideration the second night. The only difference in the process is if a motion for reconsideration is made within a half hour of the vote, it only takes a majority vote for the town meeting to then move to the actual reconsideration of the article. If the motion for reconsideration is made more than a half hour after the main motion was acted on, it takes a 2/3 vote. But that's the only distinction in time. Some people have asked me about repeated motions to reconsider. Town meeting time, which as I mentioned is the book that guides our conduct of the meeting, suggests that if it's an abuse, I can refuse to recognize the motion. So what would happen, the example is if there are repeated motions to reconsider, at some point I can say, enough, we're not going to have another motion to reconsider. My hope is that is not, oh wow, there's light. My hope is that that's not going to happen. And I want to first thank everybody for coming tonight, and to thank in particular the town employees, Dave Ramsey, Felicia Hoffman, Greer, who's over there, thank you, Greer, and the warrant committee, all of whom have done a Herculean task. Second town meeting that we've had in just a few months. The Board of Selectmen have been very busy. Ford Spalding, our representative to the Minuteman School Committee, has been very busy. This has been an extraordinary year, and I think you all deserve our heartfelt thanks for all the work that you've done on our behalf for the town, so thank you. As I've mentioned before, we are very fortunate to participate in the purest form of democracy, town meeting. And the tradition in Dover has always been spirited advocacy coupled with respect for the opposing views and the avoidance of personal attacks and innuendo. And I fully expect, based on my observations of the people in this room, having attended all the hearings, that we will continue that tradition. And I want to thank you in advance for your willingness to cooperate with each other, for the avoidance of ad hominem attacks and personal innuendo, and I fully anticipate that that will continue during the town meeting. As the moderator, I have to control the flow of discourse as the town meeting progresses. That means that after you make a presentation, you should plan on going back to your seat, because the question should be directed to me, the town moderator, and then I will direct the questions to the persons who are most qualified to answer. The reason that I want to make sure that we do that, so from time to time, for example, the special town meeting, we really had one article, and for it, I let you stay up there and field questions. But in a situation where we're dealing with a lot of warrant articles and where emotions may be running high, it's very important that everything be channeled for me so that I can control the nature of the discourse. So after you've made your presentation, I'll ask you to sit down. Then when we open it for general discussion, if there is a question that pertains to a comment that you made, I will direct the question to you, answer it, and then please sit down again. I don't want to have a debate. If we start having a debate, we're going to waste time and lose control of the meeting. It's not going to be productive. So very important, don't get involved in an exchange. Questions are directed to me, then I will direct it to the appropriate persons. Okay? The timing is going to be very difficult for this meeting because of all the issues that we have to have addressed. And I wanted to ask, traditionally we would start with a warrant committee presentation and also a presentation from the Board of Selectmen. And I wanted to ask, possibly, could we conceivably pare down the time for the traditional presentations? Would that be something, Doug, do you think we could do? Reduce?
I don't see why not.
Okay, very good. And Candace and Robin? Okay. That would allow us to then get right into the flow of the various articles. And we'll have the traditional motion to be read before Article 1. Doug, you will be making that motion. So that should be a fairly non-controversial one. And then we'll move into Article 1. And again, Doug, you will be making that motion with respect to the annual report. Article 2, with respect to the revolving fund account, who will be speaking to this? Mr. Forte, you'll be making a motion. Will anybody from the warrant committee will be speaking to Article 2? Nobody?
We haven't spoken to it.
Okay.
This is such a routine article.
Okay, so you won't need, okay, very good. Excellent. Article 3. We'll go through the salaries. Is there anybody on the warrant committee that, if there's a question, I guess it will depend on the nature of the salary. So we'll just wait to see which salary is being, if there is a hold or a question, and we'll direct it to that person who's in charge or the liaison.
I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, okay, fine. Same thing with Article 4. We'll follow the same.
The joke is it's a screening call. It's a little early for 18.
I was gonna say, does that have anything to do with the rail trail? It's like.
That was our train leaving the station.
Exactly.
Okay. Article 5 will be the same drill. And then after Article 5, we will then go to the special meeting, which will be dealing with the Minuteman question, the bond offering. And Ford, you made a presentation before that was fine in terms of the length of time.
The exact same.
Yep, okay. Now, a question may come up about the relation of the bond liability, expenses for education, and educating students who have special needs. I cannot allow a question that asks whether any of our current students have special education requirements. It would be violating federal and state law because it would be an invasion of privacy. What I will allow as a question is what the impact, if in the future we had students with special needs or special education requirements, what the impact would be on the town financial liabilities. So I would like to make sure that somebody's prepared to address that?
Both the warrant committee and I have, we've written it out and they have that asked.
Okay, very good.
And it's very simple.
numbers in here on that subject.
Yep, okay, good. So I just want to make sure, because I think the issue had come up at one of the hearings, and I just wanted to make very clear that I can't allow a question that relates to the status of any of our current students in any of our schools. And so that question will be overruled immediately.
Very brief answer, it's
Right.
really all contained.
Good, good, thank you. You'll note that the special meeting is actually going to have two articles. The second one will be dismissed if the first one is approved. The reason that we have two articles is because of some legal subtleties about the wording of the statute. So it was felt by council necessary. And by the way, there are two seats up here if you want to join us. There are two seats. So after we deal with the bonding issue, we will then dissolve the special meeting and resume the annual meeting again. And we'll proceed through the articles. I don't really see anything that is going to be of a particular problem. Dave, correct me if I'm skipping over something.
How far ahead are you?
I'm up to Article 9. I don't see anything there. Article 10. Article 11. Article 12.
Regional school,
Right, regional school.
all standard now.
Article 13.
Will be dismissed if they pass
Right,
the first one.
right. Now, Article 14 is a request that we engage in some environmental planning and qualify for some grant money. Jack Donahue, I understand, is going to be making the presentation on that? Okay. Is Mark here? Mark, will you be involved with that at all? Is a report required from the planning board for Article 14, or?
So Article 14 is not sponsored by the planning board.
Okay.
It's sponsored by the selectmen. It's for adoption of stretch code.
Mhm.
Article 15, which is also involved in the same initiative.
But that's a bylaw amendment,
It
yeah.
is a bylaw amendment that.
So you'll require a report.
Speak to in his comments, but
Right.
I will also separately
Right.
and introduce. I will not speak to it in detail, given that there will have been a vote on it.
Yeah, and technically, the planning board has to report to town meeting, so
And we have a written report
Okay.
that has been prepared.
if you could just briefly refer to that, so we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's, that'd be great.
Sure.
Okay. And does the AG ever ask? Have they ever asked to see if there was a
I've never
report?
seen them enforce that requirement.
Good, good. Better to be safe than sorry. Okay. All right, so Article 15 then will be Jack and then Mark making a brief report. Article 16, Mark?
Yes.
You'll be making the report as well and talking briefly about Article 16?
Yeah, I'll also try to be very brief on that as well. But the only thing to mention on that is the planning board meets tonight at 7, and we're actually finalizing the language of that bylaw, which may or may not change. If it doesn't change, it's been on file at the town clerk's office for a long time. Because of some comments, it may change, in which case we file a copy of the amended language right away. And there's also a version of the motion that town council has drafted that would reference a handout at town meeting that would include any changes,
Okay,
which will be shown in red line. if
okay.
there are.
And your main motion will include those changes, so an amendment won't be required?
That's right.
Okay, very good. Okay, then we get to Article 17. Who from the selectmen will be speaking to that? Kins? Jim, okay. And this is going to require a 2/3 vote. So it may very well, based on what I've seen so far at the hearings, I expect we'll have a standing count for this. So this is going to take a little bit of time to have the count. Jim Dowling will be speaking on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. Doug, is there anybody that you would want on the warrant committee to speak initially, or would you rather wait to answer questions as they're posed?
That's something we're considering tonight, actually.
Okay.
whether We will make any presentation on Article 17.
Okay, yeah, that sounds fine. Just let me know by Monday night, so I'll be able to put you in.
And Jim, Gino Carlucci, the town planner, will also be speaking to
Okay.
supplement Jim Dolly's remarks with respect to the specifics of the plan being proposed.
Okay, so would the order be then Jim, Gino, and Doug, or somebody from the warrant committee? Would that be okay, Doug? Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, there had been some discussion about a longer PowerPoint presentation with respect to Article 17. I'm hoping that we can reduce the amount of PowerPoint that's going to be introduced at the meeting in order to economize our time. And I'll be working on that tomorrow, talking to some of the individuals that were involved in that, in order to try to streamline the process. I really want to try to finish this meeting Monday night by 11 p.m. because I think that it would be very unfortunate if we drag into Tuesday night. There'll be a change probably of participants, and I think that the outcome shouldn't be dependent on who happens to be able to come Monday night and not come Tuesday night. So it's my hope that we can really get through this by 11 p.m. on Monday evening. Now we come to Article 18, and I would like to say I really appreciate the efforts of both the proponents and the opponents of the rail trail agreeing to get together and make a joint brief presentation at the outset of a discussion of this article. I think that is going to be wonderful to set the stage for a reasoned, fact-oriented discussion of what are the costs and the benefits of this article. So I want to thank both sides for your reasonableness in offering, agreeing to participate. In fact, your suggestion, very much appreciated. And I think it's a wonderful idea. So we'll start Article 18 with that joint presentation, and then we'll move to a presentation by the proponents for 10 minutes. Then there'll be a 10-minute presentation by the opponents. Then we'll have a presentation by the selectmen, or comments.
Statements.
Right, statements by the selectmen and statements by the warrant committee. After we've done that, then we'll open it up for general discussion. I really want the comments coming from the floor to be dealing with new facts or new perspectives or new arguments. I'm hoping that we'll be able to avoid having a repetition of what already has been stated during your presentations. Again, in order to try to have as efficient a meeting as possible. And I think that in discussions with you, particularly the Board of Selectmen, I think that if we can focus on the key issues, and Jerry, thank you very much for those questions that you circulated. I really appreciate that you did that before town meeting, because it allows everybody to be prepared to address those.
I'd like to add, or actually reinforce one of the points. And again, as I said at the beginning of that, I'm on neither side on this, just strictly on the process. There was an article in today's Dover paper, and there apparently is a mailing as well on the matter of losing the opportunity to reinstate MBTA commuter rail and the impact, financial impact on the town's real estate value. A very lengthy article, and it's all false, in that those of us who are aware of it in the 1980s, when Menno Cohen was on the Metropolitan Area Planning Committee, first one, and then secondarily an expensive study was done by the MBTA, which came in both cases to the absolute and I believe final conclusion that the MBTA would, certainly in any of our lifetimes, never reinstitute the rail, not the least of which was because of the cost and the lack of parking, but because it would cannibalize service from other lines. And I think we've got to put that one to bed if it even crops up in Monday night.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up here so that both parties can explore the issue and be prepared to comment on it, either in their presentation or during the question and argument session that will follow. Okay, but really important, if you have a chance to talk to your friends about this, really stress, it's not going to be helpful to be repeating arguments that had already been made, and it's not going to be helpful to be repeating factual representations that have already been made. What's going to be helpful after the presentations will be either requests for clarification, introduction of new facts, or introduction of a different perspective in applying the facts. And people are, for those of you who have experience with controversial items at other town meetings where there have been spirited discussions, people don't appreciate if there's a repetition. They really want to just, they're like sponges trying to acquire the new facts and trying to determine as a result how they're going to vote. Okay. David?
Do you know the names of who's going to be doing the presentations?
I do. Well, I don't. I know, I'm assuming some of the people, but I don't know who they all are. Thank you, David. Have you all decided yet, or?
Yeah, so, because we met the other night and talked about this, I'll be presenting on behalf of the Friends of the Dover
Okay.
anyway. There was some conversation about you joining jointly with some people.
Yes, with Andreas.
Okay.
So is that a joint type of presentation? Is that something that's?
Yeah, I mean, usually what's done, both can come up and, obviously only one person can speak at a time. It might be that one person's speaking for 2 minutes and then switching the mic to the next person, or it might be you split the time, 5 minutes and 5 minutes, whichever way that you think is most effective. Obviously I would encourage you to have the person who's most knowledgeable on certain issues make the presentation with respect to those issues. And you can think about how you want to sequence that discussion. Really what you're serving is educating the voting population. You're really educating the citizens. So, think of this as an educational process of the costs and benefits of the proposed rail trail. In many ways, this is a lot like the educational debates that we've had over years. There are benefits and there are costs. And when you think back to some of those discussions that we've had over the years, most recently at the special town meeting, by focusing on the facts, you're able to present clearly what the picture is and allow people to make an informed decision. And by doing that also, you eliminate a lot of the emotion, which I think is a real positive. We are, regardless of what happens, we're all going to be living in this town.
And along those lines, Missy and I signed a joint letter coming from
Right,
our
and-
two groups, which we have tonight, and we'll try to circulate as
Right.
best we can to hit on those exact.
And I appreciate you and Missy's offer to make that joint statement at the beginning of the article. I think that would be very helpful.
So how would that work, just so that?
Just both of you come up and just in a minute, simply, explain that even though we have very different views, that this is something that we think reasonable people can reasonably disagree, and we want to have a reasoned discussion of what the pros and cons are.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
And I think that would be very helpful to set the tone. And I greatly appreciate you offering to do that. Thank you very much, both of you.
So Jim, I have a question just in terms of thinking about this article. The actual article asks for, to authorize the selectmen to enter into conversations about a lease. It doesn't actually talk about whether or not we should have a rail trail in the
Right.
town of Dover.
Right.
And so I'm wondering how you're thinking about managing the conversation and the comments, and if you're going to specifically try to focus them away from whether or not there should be a rail trail and onto the lease, or if you're going to somehow cut it halfway down the middle, or,
I think
you know
that-
what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. And I thought, thank you, Carol, this is a difficult question. In a perfect world, since the article is dealing solely with authorization, we would be focused on that. But I think that the interest in the rail trail, its desirability, its positive aspects, and its negative aspects are so tightly intertwined with authorizing the selectmen to engage in negotiations with the T, I think that it would be very difficult to try to separate one from the other. So I will be accepting arguments and factual presentations on both.
And then will you be directing people back to the actual article about authorizing?
Right,
that-
right.
So they understand what,
Yep,
that they can approve the
right.
selectmen going forward, but that does not necessarily mean that there will be a rail trail.
Yeah, in fact, that is why I insisted that the selectmen speak at the outset,
Okay,
after the presentations by the opponents and proponents of the rail trail, because I think it's very important that people understand the procedural posture, which is, we are making, in effect, a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, telling them that we want them, if it's approved, we want them to engage in negotiations with the MBTA. The nature of those negotiations will be entirely within the control of the Board of Selectmen. What they think is reasonable or is not reasonable in their negotiations with the T will be entirely up to the Board of Selectmen. And they have stated that they will bring it back to town meeting for approval after they have negotiated the lease. And just as a little background, I think, is a legal opinion from town council about the language for the motion, the authorization, that it's not mandatory, that it's only advisory. Is that on the website, Dave?
I don't know if it's on the website, it's been distributed, we certainly can put it there.
Okay.
Want us to put it on the website?
Would it be okay? Sure.
Absolutely.
If the selectmen approve, that would be fine. We have an opinion of council that just made clear
right,
that the town meeting cannot mandate the Board of Selectmen to take any specific action. So that's why the article and I believe the motion, I'm not sure if the final motion has been drafted yet, but that's why the intention was that it will use the word authorize. And then the Board of Selectmen will take the ball and run with it from there.
Will someone be making that point?
Yeah, the selectmen will.
We are explaining the scope of the motion.
Okay,
As part
great.
of our presentation, Jim. The motion is to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a lease.
Huh?
And so that's different, of course, than mandating.
Right, right. Right.
But it's not just to negotiate, and we understand the Board of Selectmen's position, or at least two of the three Board of Selectmen's position on that, but I think we need to be careful about how it's presented at town meeting, because we can't present this motion as it's drafted and say all this does is authorize them to negotiate. This motion gives the Board of Selectmen the discretion to negotiate and enter into the lease. And so it's important to us, I mean, from the Friends' perspective, we're handing, we think that this vote hands the discretion or authorizes the board to move forward with the lease, and that turns it over to the board to do what they think is appropriate.
Right.
There's no mandate. But I think that it's important for us in the town to understand that as a matter of the scope of the motion and what it in fact authorizes, the Board of Selectmen could decide to enter into a lease on the basis of that authorization. There's nothing in the motion itself that compels the board
To bring it back to town meeting. Okay. Okay, good point. Jerry?
I think that there's a bit of legal background here that actually has nothing to do with this motion, but may help make this clear, and that was, there was an opinion by the Municipal Law Division of the Attorney General's Office. Actually, there were two opinions. One of them actually was in regard to the town of Dover several years ago, and that opinion makes very clear that town meeting as a legislative body cannot direct or control the actions of the executive body the selectmen. And that was very precise in that opinion, and you may want to bring that point out.
Yeah, well, actually, that was in town council's memorandum, Jerry. That, and
I
there's,
haven't seen
there's,
town council's
yeah,
memorandum.
there's also an SJC decision right on point, so, yeah, that's very clear. That is very clear. Okay. Yes?
Jim,
Mr.
I
Merrill.
have just a quick question. As you take a look at the article on line 3, it talks about along all or any portion of land known as the Bay Colony Railroad Line. And as you take a look at subsection 2, you're talking about a portion of that and not the whole line. And I believe that's a change. Is that just part of what's going to be proposed?
I don't know.
We will explain that
Okay.
as part of our presentation too.
I understand. I mean, I saw that there was some desire to do that, and I wasn't too sure
Yeah,
how
so
that was going to interact with the actual article.
so that clause 2 that I think you're looking
Yeah, at the
at.
very bottom.
Yeah, so that's what, yeah, so clause 2 is language to ensure that what we have been advocating, which is a trail that starts south of Springdale, will be permitted by the terms of the lease. We thought that was an important.
Understand.
Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments?
Jim, when we have our 10 minutes, how do you control the time for that?
Well, first I stand up very politely. And then I start to make motions. And then you'll notice there's a curtain behind me. It has a long hook back there. But right. For those who worked with me when I was a scoutmaster, they've seen that long hook. But usually I'll start to stand and I'll start to shift uncomfortably in my stance. At some point, if you go more than a minute over, I'll gavel. Because I think it's very important from a perspective of fairness that people have at the same time.
Yeah.
And,
And then what about content? We'll have a slide presentation, I imagine others will,
right,
to, we're rehearsing that on Sunday, and people will have views on what that, there will be tweaks based on that.
yeah, we're gonna need when do we want the PowerPoint, Dave?
By noon tomorrow.
By Friday.
Okay,
The reason being is it keeps rolling later. It doesn't give the IT person, because he's not always available, to just stop everything and do that. So we're really trying to be very firm about that.
now that doesn't mean you can't change your presentation,
Correct.
it's just that your PowerPoints will have to be by Friday. Would that work for you, or?
Well, we expect to have them, I've looked at the draft today that looks
Right,
pretty good.
okay.
But we have people who need to weigh in, and
Right,
we can submit something by tomorrow, but
Because we close at 1. But 5.
can we give them 5?
Get him to 5 and then.
Friday at 5 PM? Would that
it
work?
still doesn't solve our Sunday night problem.
Well, that's your problem, Marco, that's not my problem.
I understand, but this seems like a procedure for an IT person to double-click a file.
The other thing is that I have to look at everything that's going to be on the screen as well.
Okay.
It's most likely to be an omission of a slide or.
Yeah.
Unless
I mean, if
adding a slide, so.
If that happens, maybe we can slip something in at the end. I can't promise, it really will depend on our IT person. But as you can imagine, with a town meeting with so many articles and presentations that are going to be made, it's a bit of an effort for him to put it all together. And also, as the moderator, I have to review everything
Okay.
to make sure that it's appropriate for town meeting.
Are you comfortable too that there are certain things you may have picked up on that Marco's pretty good at answering and speaking to? Is that okay if that night, especially on some of the more legal things, while I'm giving the presentation, Marco might be the better person to explain
Yeah, sure, I mean, you can, any sequence or number of speakers that you like, it just,
No, what I mean to say is, I'll make the presentation.
right.
But if afterwards people wanted to do a deeper dive into some of the.
Yeah, sure, if there's a legal question, we'll be turning obviously to town council.
Yeah,
And then Marco, if you want to say something, raise your hand and I'll be happy to call on you.
Right, but the process would be that the town council would likely answer the question, and then I would,
Right,
as if I were raising my own point, I would address you to speak to something.
yeah, and again, it's very important, new facts or new arguments, not a repetition of what had already been said. And I know there's always a temptation, I know you're not suggesting this, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, I know that there's always a temptation to say, well, 10 minutes, and then we'll have somebody else stand up and they'll speak for another 3 minutes in the course of the Q&A. No, no. I really want the Q&A to be a Q&A from the citizens and not additional canned presentations. Again, it's a question of fairness. We're establishing the rules in order to have a level playing field. And,
It also often backfires.
yeah, it does. I mean, here's somebody who was chair of the school committee years ago. I can tell you, who dealt with one of the most controversial items, building a new Chickering school. And so it's really important to maintain a perception of fairness, because it will come back to bite you if people think that you're not playing by the rules. And we bend over backwards, as you can tell. I mean, we really have been trying to make sure that we're keeping this as level as possible for everybody. So, and I know that you want to do the same, so thank you.
All right, and maybe that's something, Missy, that we can talk about as well, in terms of making sure that both sides are communicating.
Right.
That it's the 10 minutes and then
Right,
and turn it over to the citizens.
right. I think that would be very helpful.
It makes great sense to have one group speak, and then we speak, and then it goes to the selectmen
Right,
and
and
the
the-
warrant committee, because it's like a break almost
Yeah.
between when we're done with our presentation, and then the officials speak, and then.
And that's,
so
in fact, that's,
hopefully, lots of things are cleared up, and then it goes
Right.
to people.
and that's exactly why we set it up that way. We also thought it would be good to give everybody a little bit of a breathing period, right? So that, after you've made your presentation, you have a chance to sort of collect yourselves again while the selectmen and the warrant committee are talking, and then open it up. So,
Jim,
Yeah.
quick question. Do you have a predefined set of time that you have in mind for the Q&A, or how do
no,
you?
I guarantee at some point somebody's going to move the question. It happens all the time. So it will be simply a question of, I have no idea who that will be. There are some people in this room who have done it in the past. I would hope that we're able to have some reasonable period of discussion so that people have the opportunity to feel that they've been heard. I think that's really important. I think it would be very unfortunate if somebody made the motion to consider the question immediately. If that did happen, I could not rule it out of order. It is non-debatable. We would have to move immediately to the vote of the motion for reconsideration. So it's my hope that people will allow, before anybody tries to make that motion, that we have a reasonable period of discussion so that people will feel like they've had an opportunity to contribute. Yes, Ralph?
Would it be appropriate for you to make that statement somewhere?
I certainly will, if you think that is a good idea, Mr.
I think,
Former
again,
Selectman.
just to set a tone, I think it might not be.
Okay, all right, very good. Yes,
Follow on to that, Jim, we might also expand on the fact that if you're forced to have a vote for reconsideration, that it will in all likelihood have to go to a standing vote.
yeah, yeah.
And then that just will delay everything.
Oh, yeah. In fact, it's my intent with respect to this main motion to not even have a voice vote, to move directly to a standing vote. Because I think it's going to be almost impossible to determine anyways, and I think that it's much fairer to just proceed directly. People can see who's standing up, who's not standing up, and we can count the votes and then move on. And I think it's also helpful for anybody that might be thinking about whether they want to have a motion for reconsideration or not. By the way, if in a voice vote, this is very important in the handout, if we have a voice vote on the other articles and you have any reason to think that I got it wrong, you can stand up as a matter of right and challenge my determination of the voice vote. And at that point, I will ask if there are 6 other people who also agree, and if there are 7 people in total who think I may have misjudged the voice vote, then we will proceed directly to a standing vote. So it's very important that people know that you always have that right. You'll see that I err on the side of conservatism. Those of you who have been at prior town meetings know that if it's even remotely close, in fact, some people have suggested that I'm being far too cautious about this, I will move to a standing vote because I want to make sure. And I'm also a little deaf in one ear. So, but I want to make sure everybody understands that. I will not, with respect to this motion, we will go directly to a standing vote. Okay? Yes, sir.
The other thing, I'm sure you're concerned about it, once Article 18 has either been approved or rejected, you'll probably want to make clear to everyone not to leave because you fear for the loss of the quorum.
Yeah, well, right, 2 points. One, there might be a loss of quorum, and 2, technically a quorum is not lost until it's challenged. So what could happen is a lot of people leave, and then there's a motion for reconsideration, and because a lot of people left, the vote might totally reverse itself. So I think, that's a more likely scenario that could happen. And yes, I will caution people about that.
That has definitely happened before.
It has definitely happened before. In fact, Mr. Crowley here was the engineer of one of those reversals.
Might happen again.
Can never tell. Okay, any other questions? Okay, and again, thank you very much for the spirit of cooperation. It's very helpful and very much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, moving on, then Article 19 we will dismiss because it will be, it's already been addressed by a special town meeting outcome. Article 20 will also be dismissed. 21, stormwater management and erosion. Mr. Merrill will be making a motion and Mr. Peterson will be seconding. Is there going to be any presentation or discussion on this? Did anybody want to?
We haven't planned any
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty pro forma, but, okay. If there is anybody, just tug on
It's
me.
it's like an unfunded mandate.
Right, okay, good. Article 22, Reserve Fund. Expect any discussion on this, Doug, or
No.
just, okay. Article 23, transfer from free cash. Now, this is for a payment that relates to a prior fiscal year. And this actually requires a 4/5 vote. If I don't have a unanimous vote on this, because remember, I'm a little hard of hearing, I'm going to have to ask for a standing vote, since it's an 80% vote. So I'm hoping, since it's only for $178.70, that we can have a unanimous vote. In fact, if the...
You might want to mention that as well.
Right.
That will help facilitate it.
I will. In fact, if it were legally permissible, I would write the check myself, so that we would be out of there by 11 o'clock. Okay.
Jim, the lease is less than that.
I'm sorry? Yeah, right. The lease is majority vote. Okay.
It's less than the $178.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right, to see, Article 24, to see if the town will make supplemental appropriations. We're going to dismiss that. 25, free cash. Is this the final free cash number, or will we be adjusting this? This is the final, wow.
We'll be adjusting
Oh, it'll be adjusted based on what happens during the meeting, okay. Okay, so-
Possible. If everything goes where we plan, it will be this number.
Okay,
Does that include the dollar and the 178?
Yeah, it does, actually.
okay, great, well, great job, fellas, this is great, very good. Article 26, we'll dismiss, and then we'll have a motion to dissolve, and hopefully it will be by 11. Now, if it gets to be around 11, and we're getting close to the end, I'll just try to rush through, so please stay, so that we can rush through. And remember, we have a quorum until somebody challenges it. All right? Okay. Thank you very much for attending.
Special to
Yes, sir.
Article 1, is that a 2/3 vote?
No, it's a majority vote.
And that's authorizing the spending?
Right, it's authorizing the issuance of the bond, right?
And is there any 2/3 vote of the whole minute?
No, it's all majority vote by state statute. It's different from other bond issuances. Since this is a state-created district, it's a majority vote by the state statute. It's not your usual 2/3 vote for a bond issuance. Which means that hopefully we can have just a voice vote. But we'll see. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. We'll see you all Monday night. Look forward to seeing your PowerPoints before then. Thank you. I'm sorry about the rush, but...
This is great.